feel good to go?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Q&A for Kenyatta Do Not Wait Your Turn. My name is Dominique O'Neill, and I am a programmer at SF DocFest. And it is my absolute honor to welcome the director of the film, Tim Harris, Dr. Matthew Miller Kenyatta, and Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure.
Happy to be here.
Likewise.
So I want to start this off by asking Tim how you met Representative Kenyatta and when did you decide to make a documentary about him?
Sure. So I met Malcolm Kenyatta. I think we finally figured it out. It was around the 2009, 2010 area. So it's been about 13 years, I'd say. We met at Temple University, which is where we both went to school. And it's actually in the district where Malcolm grew up, and he still lives today in North Philadelphia. And so I was working on a show at Temple called Temple Smash. It's like their version of SNL, had a host, musical guest, the whole thing. And Malcolm was the host of one of the episodes. He was a poet on campus, and he did slam poetry performances. And so he kind of became known to our producer and became the host. And you could just tell right away that there was something really special about him. He was really a dynamic speaker. And so I just kept following his career. We kind of became friends online after that. And I asked him at one point, I said, Malcolm, if you're ever going to run for public office, let me know. I think there could be a story there. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And look at him now. Obviously, that's changed. But we did a short back in 2018 about his first run for state rep at that point. And then that kind of led to his career growing. And I felt like it would be time to return to the story, especially when he told me he was running for US Senate. And so I thought, why not capture some history? And so that's sort of how it came about.
Thanks. For Dr. Matt and Representative Kenyatta, on your end, there's a lot of vulnerable moments in this film. There's your counter proposal and the wedding and the eventual election results. How were you all feeling being together in the same spaces with a camera crew and having these like really intimate moments being documented?
Well, fun fact, I'll add to what Tim just said. I was actually running for student body president at the time too, when I went on Temple Smash. So here we are. I know it sounds weird for people listening to this, but after a while, you really stop remembering that you're being filmed. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but on election day, there was literally a camera that they like jerry-rigged onto the car that was peering into the car like all day as we were driving around. And it wasn't until the evening that I even recognized it was a camera there. And so I think it speaks to a lot of just, the comfort that I had, and I think we had with Tim, the trust that we had in him and the team, to tell the story. I think he's just an incredible artist and creative mind and storyteller. I really think he's a genius. And he just allowed us to be ourselves and to just, exist. It wasn't a lot of like probing in situations as they were happening, a lot of it after, but like, in the moment, I think a lot of the scenes that were captured, it was very easy. It was an easy process, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's like that saying, if you want to go far, go alone. Or sorry, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I feel like being around him and around the crew, it eventually felt kind of like like friends who just wanted to kind of check in on you, and it didn't really feel like there was too much of any gotcha sort of moments. Like there was a lot of that comfort with just being ourselves and being vulnerable, but also I think just being honest, actually learning that their intentions were to really try to get us to share the story that maybe other people weren't following as closely. And so that felt really empowering. And so I think that helped ease over some of any of the sort of anxieties. And the last thing I'll say actually is, like, in case other folks may not be able to notice, like, we're millennials. So we're always like with our cameras in front of ourselves anyway. And so it's just kind of like, well, here, you take that phone out of my hand, you all can capture some of this. So yeah, it's pretty comfortable after a while.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you'll see plenty of cameos from me throughout the film, like my hand taking a picture of Malcolm and Matt.
That's so funny. So I don't know all too many political documentaries that include a politician's significant other. And this film really highlights the, like, beautiful love that you two share. Can whoever wants to answer, can you just talk about the importance of seeing this relationship on screen in a political context, in a political documentary?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think there's a lot about, folks' humanity that gets lost in the political sort of landscape. And I think we have it somewhat better now that, like, you have social media and people can kind of, tell their story and make you feel like they're more relatable. Like, there's something nowadays, at least, that feels like, you're a politician. Some of them that are really good on social media, like this guy. But like, there's a I think there was a really important sort of realization that I had during the process of this, that, it was also just as much of a decision for me to, be a part of that journey with him. And it wasn't just, okay, cool, you want to do that? Go ahead and go off and do it. Like, as you saw in the scene with Joy Reid, like the announcement video, she was just like, is your husband ready to do this? And like, that's kind of been the case since his first run. And so I think it was, again, a real honor to be able to, in some ways, be sort of a symbol for people that are also supporting their spouses' ambitions and their dreams. And it may not necessarily be a politician. It's just, what that looks like when someone has a big idea and they're trying to grow into that big idea, and you have to give a lot of yourself. I have a neighbor actually that told me, I was taking out the dog. As you saw in the film, I walk the dog a lot, as much as I can. And she saw me and she was just like, Matt, like, you're married now, congratulations. As a spouse, you'll learn that there are certain seasons where you have to give 150%. It's not 50-50, it's not 100, it's 150 for one person. And that's love, and I think so for me, it was really important to show that side of it, that, I had a whole job while this was going on. And so this was a real big commitment for me too. And I'm really proud of how Tim told that story.
Yeah.
No, I didn't, I didn't know what to, expect. And that's some of the fear of sort of just giving yourself over, giving your life over for somebody to film and then interpret through their lens. And, it goes without saying that that's a big, important part of my life. But I think, you really hit the nail on the head. And I think it's important for folks, who watch it, that this is, in many ways, I think a love story, and not just to, between Matt and I, but I think a love story to Pennsylvania, a love story for the type of country that I really think we deserve, and that certainly this moment in time, it feels like there have been a lot of fits and starts in terms of a place where all people are treated with a real, like, just a baseline of dignity and respect. And that includes being able to live authentically with your partner and do the things that, a lot of straight couples take for granted, right? That you're holding hands walking down the street, or that, your partner comes to a US Senate debate if you are, incredibly, incredibly, I don't know, masochistic enough to run for US Senate.
That's thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's just so like it's so wonderful to see that on screen. And belated congratulations, by the way,
Oh, thank you.
on your marriage. It's so nice to have it on film, because I feel like every time somebody watches it, you get to like get married again. It's gonna be new for ages.
To that point, just one thing I wanted to say was a lot of that was led by Malcolm and Dr. Matt, including us in that process. You know, obviously as a filmmaker and as a documentarian, you want access to, to everything, and that's just not possible. But you really do have to follow the lead of the participants in the film. And in this case, you know, I think most of the most personal moments in the film we were invited to. It wasn't me asking, hey, when are you doing this, when are you doing that? So the counter proposal, Dr. Matt tipped me off to it and said, hey, this could be cool, you could come see me get the ring, and then let's come up with a plan so that Malcolm doesn't know this is happening, but you guys are there. And then the wedding, they texted me and they said, hey, we have some great news, we're going to get married. I was like, great, could we film it? They're like, yeah, that's why we texted you about it. So I think that was really, you know, you can't ask for for better buy-in than that when they're literally inviting you to film some of these super important moments in their lives. And I really do think that's a differentiating factor in this film. You know, if people ask me what's different between this and another political film, it certainly is this personal aspect to it. And I agree that it adds more dimension to the film itself, but also to politicians. You know, a lot of times in a political documentary, you see the person on the campaign trail, you know, kind of in meetings about strategy and things like that, but you don't often see the person fully fleshed out. And I think in this film, you do get to see, you know, a really full picture of both Dr. Matt and Malcolm. But as Malcolm being the politician, I think, especially for Malcolm, to see kind of what he's like when he's not, you know, spitting fire, angry about something that Republicans are doing, like you get to see him like madly in love with somebody too. And that's really neat to see and important to see.
Yeah. Can I follow up on something that you said, which is, you know, you're filming this in an election that happened in the past, and I would say, you know, most viewers would likely know the outcome of that election. So as a filmmaker, can you talk a little bit about how you crafted the film around that, around people already knowing what is going to happen in that election?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's been a question we've gotten a lot when we've tried to talk to people about potentially, you know, streaming this is kind of, especially before the election happened, they said, well, you know, it looks like he might not win. How are people going to feel about that? And to me, it's about what can I show people that they don't already know? And so, of course, most people are already going to know that John Fetterman won and became our senator as soon as they see him in the film. But they, in a lot of cases, probably won't know the struggle and the reasons for that, and the reasons that someone like Malcolm didn't really become as known in this race. And I think that's what it became. It became kind of the crux of the film to me when we were making it, is this idea of electability and kind of the issues that anyone who's not a straight white male face getting elected in this country. And so that kind of became the lens through which I think you learn something in this film. You get to see, and I think Malcolm even learned a lot himself in this process. I don't think he thought it was going to be easy at all, and he says that throughout the film. But I don't think even he anticipated how hard of how large of a hill he would have to climb in order to even get an ounce of traction. And so I think even if you watch it and you know what happens, you won't know, you don't know that, and you don't know that struggle because chances are you haven't lived it. And Malcolm's literally the only, you know, openly gay person of color to be on a Senate ballot in US history. And so this really is a one of a kind story in that way. And then also, you know, the personal aspect, again, that's just something that I think makes this unique and keeps you tuned in, even though you know the result.
Yeah. I keep thinking about this, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name or position, but the person in the film who says, well, I'm sort of colorblind to this, and I've never really noticed a distinction in our elections in regards to race. And I keep coming back to this person because the whole film demonstrates that that is not the case. And it's, you know, you're watching this film and you're like, well, it is the case. And it's like, you want to shake this guy. Like, aren't you watching this film too? Um, but I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about those themes at all. And just what that's like in the community, if that's like a prevalent attitude or I don't know.
I mean, I think for me, the way I interpret that is I think there's I think there's some deniability there, like a not being interested in looking further. I think there's like a certain status quo that people, you know, that the person you're mentioning has been in that position for 30, 50 years. They're used to a way of things being. And when you challenge someone who's been doing this for 36 years and the person who's asking you the question is younger than that amount of time, I think there's like a resistance to wanting to actually consider an answer to that question. And so I do think that exists though for voters. I think it exists for elected officials, but you know, Malcolm, you can probably answer this question about what you hear better than I could.
You know, obviously there exist a lot of barriers to be broken, and a lot of candidates out there who are, you know, ready, willing, and able to do it. But I don't think that, you know, we should walk away from this feeling nihilistic about what the future holds or about this political moment where we find ourselves in. You know, it's difficult when you're in the middle of a battle. I'm a big, you know, football fan. And so when you see the other guys on the other side of the line and they're doing everything in their power to stop you and push you back, and, you know, everything is coming at you, it can be difficult to see the forward progress that you're making, or the fact that there are a lot of people in the stands rooting you on as you make that progress. Pennsylvania is full of incredible people. And I refuse, and I really reject this idea that the worst angels of our nature reflect who we are, or that if you find somebody from Pennsylvania who did a bad thing, well, that's who we are. You know, I just came back from a 5-county tour of Northwestern Pennsylvania, very, very rural, you know, communities. And, you know, I didn't just show up because I just showed up. You know, I showed up because I was the special guest of rural Dems in all these areas where you would not expect that they would even ask the special guest to be a Black gay guy from North Philadelphia. But the reality is that there are a lot of people who we centered in our campaign who know exactly what I know about the tenuousness that working class people feel all the time. You know, the stress that builds up, the constant tension of, you know, any emergency possibly leading you to bankruptcy, any bill that comes in, you know, you're figuring out how to split it up multiple ways to get through it. And I tend to look more, and I said at the end of the film, that I don't think the takeaway is, see, Pennsylvania will never elect, you know, a Black person, or never elect a gay person. I mean, when you think about it, we only ended up spending, I think, about $50,000 on TV advertising. I mean, just think about that. My opponent spent millions of dollars. We got double-digit support in a race where every day, if you were reading a newspaper, if you were watching TV, every pundit, every reporter was suggesting to voters that a vote for me was a waste of time. I was not going to win, so why even vote for me? Pick one of these other 2 candidates that better fit the mold. And still, a large number of Pennsylvanians, you know, talking about 6 figures, Pennsylvanians rejected that. And I think that says a lot more than some of the very real, very intransigent sort of barriers that exist for people of color that make it more difficult for us to run. And we shouldn't have to do it better and be 6 times, you know, greater and run harder and all those different things. We shouldn't have to face those obstacles. But as Tim said, we're the first campaign to ever even try. And a part of what that does is convince somebody else that it's not a lost cause for them to try too. And we're going to get to a place where, somebody's going to watch this film in 30 years and they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? That somebody was concerned about him being Black, or, his husband showing up with him at a debate. We won't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines in the film is a woman who says, "We're going to support the person that supports us." And I just wanted to talk about like your philosophy with like how you campaign and how you are one of the only politicians who really is in community with their constituents. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
I think we do a disservice as elected officials, and I get the the inertia behind this. I get why people do it. But when we hold ourselves up as superheroes who are coming to save the day, the reality is we're one part of a broader coalition of people who have always been, demanding more and better. And so that's why I'm always so shocked when people say there's this new movement of working people. I mean, you just have to pick up a book. Well, I mean, it might be banned depending on where you live, but if it's not, you should pick up a book. Recognize that, frankly, all of us are just picking up a baton that has been passed to us, and we have a responsibility to run as fast, as hard, as unabashed, as authentically as we possibly can. And a part of what we tried to do in our campaign is to tell people to reject the idea that, I am Voltron and they're pulling all of their energy, into me. For younger people watch this, Voltron is a show that you should go back and watch. It's a big deal.
Dating yourself.
But I love that. But a part of what we tried to create is exactly what you said, was community, was to invite people into a struggle that they're having in their daily lives and to say, you're actually not alone. There are actually a bunch of other people who feel this just as acutely as you do. And I, as an elected official, have an opportunity, going back to a football metaphor, maybe, I get to throw or maybe I get to throw the ball, or I get to pass the ball over. And so when you're in the quarterback, everybody looks at you, but you're nothing if you're on the line by yourself. And I'm just constantly grateful for all of the people, some of whom knew me for years, and they voted for me for multiple cycles, and so they were all in. Or some people who met me for the first time and heard something or saw something in me that they saw in themselves. And frankly, there are more people than people in power. And the people are always going to be more powerful than those in power. And that's the paper tiger of this entire thing. I hear so many people throw up their hands and say, well, they're just going to do whatever they want anyway. But the reality is, if we all showed up, imagine what the difference would be. And I'll just make this final note. I'm not saying we should aspire to be Turkey. They have their own challenges, but they just had a presidential race where there was a 90% participation in the presidential race. 90%. We have not scratched the surface in this country of 60% voter, participation. And so, imagine what the outcome would be. And maybe some of the outcomes you wouldn't like, but you know what? There would be a lot more outcomes that I think a lot of us would like, and we would benefit from that type of engagement. And we tried to use our campaign as a way for people to see themselves and as a way for them to plug into a system that sometimes feels so much bigger than them.
I have one final question for you, and that's that you recently announced you are running for Pennsylvania's Auditor General. That's the right?
That's right.
Yeah. What is the best way that we can support you in your upcoming election?
What Jory would say, Dr. Mann, you all in? You ready?
I have to look at the options.
All right, he's on the record. That's a yes for him. But you know what? What's this really just builds on what we were just talking about. As I went around the campaign, I met a lot of people who felt deflated about government, and the auditor is the one role in government whose job it is to find those pain points and to identify them, to call them out, and ultimately to change the political calculus for leaders to address those issues. And we've seen it, time and time again. The last Democratic Auditor General, found thousands of rape kits, for example, that were not being tested. And just think about what that means for anybody who's been, assaulted, who's gone through that traumatic process to, collect that evidence, and then to never even have that evidence even processed, how much of a gut punch that is. And so this idea that I get to be in a position to actually be a watchdog for working people, to identify all the things that people told me all the time that wasn't working, and to put real intellectual and analytical depth, behind it. And so it's an exciting moment, and it's one of those things where if we are going to build a government that works for working people, as I said probably numerous times in the film, then it is going to take us electing good people for every single position, not just, the president, not just the Senate. It's every single role that matters. And when we lost the Senate race, we got right back on the horse after a brief intermission. We helped flip the state house for the first time in over a decade. First Black woman, and first woman in general, became Speaker of the House, Summer Lee, first African-American woman elected to Congress in history. Just a couple of days in Philly, we elected the first woman and first African-American woman to be mayor. My good friend Sarah Namarato became the first woman just a couple of days as well to lead Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is. And so every single day, we're breaking down barriers, but we have to show people that the things you care about and concerned about, there is somebody who's watching out for you, who has your back. And I endeavor to do that every single day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matt, Representative Kenyatta. Thank you so much for sharing your talents with the world. Tim, thank you for capturing it on film, and just thank you all for being here and for letting us in for a little.
And thank you all for showing this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope you all enjoy San Francisco.